Day one of the MP-IDSA Delhi Defence Dialogue 2025 opened with two most decisive voices in India's military and strategic leadership. First, our Chief of Defence Staff, General Anil Chauhan, with his steady, sharp, and unwavering address, laid down a clear battlefield truth. The future of war will be fought in multi-domain environments, powered by AI, autonomous systems, space assets, cyber warfare, and rapid integration across all three services. It was a soldier's assessment, a strategic warning, and India's blueprint for staying ahead. And then came the Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh ji, bringing the weight and wisdom of national leadership. His message cut straight to the heart of India's defense vision. True strength comes from culture, innovation, and Atmanirbharta. Indigenous code, indigenous technology, and indigenous capability. This is how India secures tomorrow. Together, their words didn't just address the event, they defined it. These two perspectives had military precisions and national policy aligned on one mission, keeping India future ready, secure, and unshaken. Now let's relive these defining moments from day one of Delhi Defence Dialogue, with first the address of General Anil Chauhan, followed by Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh ji.
I now invite General Anil Chauhan, Chief of Defence Staff of India, to kindly deliver his special address. I would also request him to kindly take 3 questions from the floor thereafter. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, General Chauhan.
Director General of MP-IDSA, Ambassador Sujan Chenoy, members of the Executive Council, serving officers, diplomats, members of the academia, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. At the very outset, let me thank the Director General and the Executive Council of MP-IDSA for inviting me for the second edition of Delhi Defence Dialogue. As the Director General had said, I was here for the inaugural address and I had spoken about the changing character of war that time. And today, of course, I'll be speaking upon impact of technology on modern warfare. And I think it's a topic that is demanding attention from governments, militaries, academia, and the defense industry, all. Let me begin by a fundamental truth that war is all about winning. There are no runners-up in war. There are no silver medalists for the valiant efforts or consolation prizes for very brave attempts. This harsh reality has driving military commanders throughout ages to seek every possible advantage over their adversaries. The stakes in any kind of a conflict are always high, and the very fate of nations, the survival of nations depends upon that. Warfare and winning in warfare is basically dependent on strategy, and it's said that it's the art of the jung. And this has been used actually in the past to win wars, and largely if you see in past, strategy was largely derived from geography. It was an element of geography into it. But gradually, the element of technology is taking over and overshadowing geography. What I'll do is I'll trace this path of transformation where geography played an important role in defining strategy, and then how technologies overshadowed that. So battle campaigns and hence wars have been won by application of superior tactics and strategy. In ancient and medieval times, terrain influenced the tactics which was adopted. Geography played an important role in deciding the outcome of battles, campaigns, and conflicts. And commanders who used geography, who understood geography, were always able to use it for their own benefit. The importance of, say, high ground for observation and for occupying defense, intervisibility for, say, command and control, suitability of terrain for achieving surprise and deception, space for military maneuver, speed of movement, direction of attack, axis of maintenance, resting a flank on a particular obstacle were all selected based on geography, and they were the battle winning factors. In some cases, the tyranny of distance itself was a factor of geography which prevented assault on you. Vast expanses of deserts, mountain ranges, and oceans provided natural barriers against invasion. We've all heard about grounds of tactical importance and vital ground, which always have been derived by a kind of a military appreciation. And military appreciation, if you people in uniform would know, that it basically an analysis of ground, that's the first factor which you do. Then is your relative strength and time and space. Analysis of these three factors will give you some kind of a plan and option, which you, enemies are known plans, then you work out on your best course of action. But the basic building block of any military campaign is analysis of terrain and geography. A close look at the principles of war also would make us realize that they are terrain and geographic centric. So offensive action, maintenance of momentum, flexibility are functions of speed and mobility, all of which is dependent on terrain. History is actually replete with examples in which skillful use of terrain actually has helped one side to win a particular battle. Take the example of, I'll take a few examples. The first is the Battle of Marathon, 490 BC between Athens and Persia. The Athenians were vastly outnumbered by Persians, but they chose a location where marshes and mountainous terrain prevented Persian cavalry to assault. They could have actually, the Athenians would have lost that particular battle, but the history was reversed. And this catastrophic defeat, which was there, is now celebrated as, as a major victory. Look at Battle of Tours, fought almost about 1,200 years later in Gaul, that's modern day France. The Frankish army, under the leadership of Charles Martel, stationed itself on a hill with forests on its flanks. The force of the Umayyad cavalry, accustomed to open field warfare, were forced to charge uphill through forests. That they could not do, and the result was a foregone conclusion. Take the Battle of Waterloo, 1815, which led to the ultimate defeat of Napoleon. The position chosen by Duke of Wellington was on a long ridge, on center of which served as a command post and observation post. He kept his infantry behind, thereby precluding Napoleon to assess the assessment of the correct strength of the forces under which Lord Wellesley. And again, similarly, French artillery also could not actually pinpoint the cavalry as well as the infantry. So again, it was a foregone conclusion. And lastly, of course, is the Gallipoli campaign, in which the Turks defeated the British Allied forces, again by skillful use of rugged mountainous terrain and setting up an impregnable defensive positions. It's not that technology was not a factor in these battles. Technology was also a factor in these battles, but comparatively, I think geography played a very important role. Weapons available in these battles were almost similar to both sides: swords, spears, bows, shields, matchlocks, muzzle-loading rifles, cannons, etc. were the same. One more factor which probably influenced the outcome of battle was morale, leadership, training. But this has been constant all throughout history. Technology started influencing the outcome of battle significantly after the invention of gunpowder. This influenced combat at the lowest end of the duel. A warrior with superior arms and better protection had better chances of winning. The same was true for an archer and as well as a cavalryman. From the discovery of gunpowder to the invention of telegraph to tanks and aircraft, nuclear arsenal, all this impacted tactics and strategy. If I were to express my views frankly, it is geography and technology had an equal measure till we talk about the first evolution in military affairs. That's about maneuver kind of in warfare. So tactical concepts like envelopment, turning movement were introduced by Germans as part of their strategy of Blitzkrieg, which involved rapid movement, surprise, concentrated firepower, and close air support, and coordinated attacks. This was the outcome of mix of technology, because a large number of platforms were used in this, and of course, geography. And to give you a modern day example of this is Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of Russia. Almost they traveled 3,000 kilometers to the gates of these big urban areas of Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. So probably technology made them reach there, but it was geography which decided the outcome of the battle. But we see in the same war, technology kind of overshadowing geography, and that's the Battle of Britain, in which the Germans used their air power to subdue the British, actually. They didn't succeed finally, but that's in the same war you find, technology overtaking geography. So let's talk about, conclude this by talking about first RMA, which actually is maneuver warfare and a refined kind of a concept of German blitzkrieg. It brought in concepts like air-land battles, deep penetration operational fires, deep battles, aircrafts, helicopters added some kind of a non-linearity into warfare to bypass terrain and obstacles effectively. Here, technology and geography were almost equal. In the second RMA, that the net-centric warfare, in which technology made leaps and bounds ahead of geography. The second RMA introduced concepts like net-centric warfare. It resulted in battlefield transparency, high degree of situational awareness, faster decision-making cycles, long-range precision strikes, and tempo. This caused a paralysis of the enemy. The second RMA also identified as a major, hence it can be identified as a major inflection point where technology started to have an edge over geography in deciding the outcome of smallest of conflicts to the largest of battles. The examples of this are Kosovo, which can be truly called as the first example of net-centric warfare, and where information-driven approach was introduced to gain victory. It introduced new tools of warfare, computers, satellite systems, advanced data processing. Innocuous looking things actually did not have a direct impact on combat, but yet they decided the outcome of the battle. They were called as force multipliers, and hereafter they started becoming more and more important, and all these technologies were independent of geography. Another example where actually net-centric warfare really matured is the Second Gulf War, and its concept and this particular concept of land net-centric warfare from air, it got extended to even land. It introduced concepts like blue force tracking, which was what the Americans introduced that time was the Force Battle Command Brigade and below, FBCB2. That's kind of a platform which they introduced. This displayed real-time location of friendly forces on digital maps. This significantly reduced the fog and friction of war and friendly fires. So if you recall, Clausewitz had spoken largely about fog and friction of war. The friction of war was removed to some extent by technology again. And finally, the fog has been removed completely by, again, technology, in which both of them, you are actually overcome geography by leaps and bounds. So today we are at the cusp of the third revolution in military affairs. And I've been calling this particular revolution as convergence warfare because it's caused by convergence of large number of technologies acting together to influence the outcome of war. It's the confluence or convergence of kinetic with non-kinetic. It's contact with non-contact battles. It's convergence of tactics, operational art, and strategy. It's a convergence of first RMA, maneuver warfare, second RMA, that's net-centric warfare, and this third RMA. And it is a convergence of warfare in traditional domains with the new domains. So simultaneously, there are a large number of technologies which are bringing about this convergence in warfare, whether it is sensors, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, robotics. But what I'll do is I'll just mention about 4 important trends, a combination of these technologies, not one technology, but a combination of technologies which is influencing this. The first is, I think, is about I call as celerity-centric warfare. Celerity is speed and velocity. Over here, what we find is, subsonic, supersonic, and hypersonic kind of vehicles in the same kind of a battlefield, along with stealth and long-range precision targeting at one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum, you find slow movers, drones, etc., which are very, very slow, go at a very small height, very small radar cross-section, and hence they're difficult to detect and difficult to target. So that's the kind of platforms which you have in today's kind of battlefield. And this has introduced non-linearity in battlefield, causing battle space to expand both spatially as well as in temporal phases. The second important trend which we see is regarding battlefield transparency. This is brought about by ubiquitous presence of a large number of sensors. So the nature has given us actually 5 senses to interact with the environment. We all know that, but what science and technology has given us at least 10 or 15 more type of sensors, different kind of sensors to understand or interact with the battlefield environment. So we have presence of optical, electro-optical, synthetic aperture radars, electronic, radio, seismic, chemical, biological. I mean, the range of sensors which are available are huge, and the numbers are even far more. Means if nature given eyes, if this population was 6 billion, so 12 billion sensors, if you could say, but the number of artificial sensors which are available today to provide that transparency is much more. It's there on everyone's mobile phone. There would be a couple of there in this particular room. And as you step out, not only on roads, but also on satellites and spacecrafts. So the number of sensors which provide information today of the battlefield to a commander is phenomenal. And this is leading to absolute battlefield transparency and a very high degree of situational awareness. So hence, I spoke about that fog of war, that particular thing is removed completely. The third important trend which we are noticing is about robotics and automation actually in warfare, including exoskeletal kind of a system in which humans are using machines actually to enhance their power. In some cases, manned and unmanned teams are working, and in some cases, they're totally autonomous systems which are working. So I've been saying that, combat has largely between, since evolution of warfare, between human beings to human beings. One may be armed with a better weapon system, but we are at the cusp of history where a future combat could be between machines and machines. So this will introduce a different kind of warfare. And the fourth kind of trend which I notice is something to do with the extreme automation, and that's being introduced by technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics, quantum computing, large language models, edge computing. This is helping people to analyze data for operational efficiency as for administrative kind of an efficiency. So it's not only human brain power is being supplemented by artificial intelligence to take better, faster, and faster decisions than what enemy can react to. So these are the four kind of trends which I see which are transforming warfare and which I said are part of that third revolution in military affair, which I said is convergence. So having spoken about these trends or technological trends, now let me connect these technologies with two main constituents of warfare. And they are, first is the battlefield itself. Everything happens over there. So the various domains and the battlefield geometry in each particular domain is also changing rapidly. And the second is combatants themselves and the combat platforms which they use for warfare. So let's talk about battlefield in the context of traditional and non-traditional domain. Let's look at land domain. Warfare originated on land and it remains the final arbiter of assessing victory. If you look at whatever historical examples which I have given you, warfare always happened in open spaces, open natural spaces, whether it was Panipat, whether it was Waterloo, Longewala, Asal Uttar, if you see that. And even this Barbarossa, which I said, where the Germans advanced 3,000 kilometers till they were stopped at the gates of these three great cities, Moscow, Stalingrad, and Leningrad. But now you see that most of the combat is taking place in urban areas. Aleppo and Raqqa in Iraq, Mosul in Baghdad, and Baghdad in Iraq, Gaza in Palestine, Grozny in Russia, Donetsk in Ukraine, Mogadishu in Somalia, Kabul in Afghanistan. Urban complexes present the most difficult battlefield geometry. You know what nature has made, it still follows some kind of rules. And we've been made by nature, we understand nature better. Whereas urban geography and urban battlefield geometry is entirely different. It's made by architects, it's man-made, and doesn't follow any kind of rules. So that makes warfare in urban terrain very, very complex. And none of these two complexes will be same, which is not so in case of open warfare. So that's a major challenge which we are facing. Urban areas can be abstract and abrupt, marked by irregular layouts and dense infrastructure that distorts traditional notions of frontline and depth. So this geometric shift with multiple level of threats, restricted line of sight, civilian presence makes combat very, very difficult. Another part which we are saying in land warfare is use of the subterranean means for warfare. And this we've seen it in Gaza recently, but used by Hamas and another adversary with the largest number of tunnel boring machines in the world also uses this to a large extent. So this is how warfare or the geometry of warfare in means the battle space in land is changing. Similarly, if you look at the maritime domain, this will remain relevant as is the lifeline of global connectivity, commerce, and strategic influence. And here, warfare is graduating down to subsurface and seabed levels. And if I were to give you an example of the Ukraine war, the undersea explosions in the Baltic Sea in September 2020, which damaged Nord Stream 1 gas pipelines, which supplied gas from Russia to Germany and Europe, were examples of this. Similarly, all your internet networks are actually lying on these cables are lying on the seabed. So warfare again over here is entering into a new kind of in battle space. So it's not maritime, but it's also underwater as well as the seabed warfare. Look at air domain. Again, traditional aircraft, you would only fly to about 40,000 feet, but you have aircraft flying now to 70,000 feet, stealth aircrafts, etc. But this is going beyond that. So now you have this higher reaches of airspace combined with near space. Near space is like that Kamran line, almost about 100 kilometers. That's where all ballistic missiles, your hypersonic missiles, fractional orbital systems, new kind of weapon systems. So you need to consider air threat as a combination of these two. Look at the lower end of the spectrum of the same airspace. That's the lower airspace below, say, 500 feet. This is getting congested by use of drones and loiter ammunition like never before. And this is another thing in which warfare is progressing. And over here, actually, now a missile like Buravetsnik, actually, which flies at a very low altitude and can traverse almost indefinitely for long distances. Of course, they demonstrated only for about 1,400 kilometers, but this can go on endlessly because it is nuclear power. It creates a new kind of a threat and a challenge. The battlefield geometries, as far as air domain is concerned, that's also changing. Look at space, which is a new domain of warfare. Space has transformed from a support domain to a decisive battlefield. It can today be contested, defended, and denied thanks to the maturing of technologies that allow persistence, presence, offensive capabilities, and cross-domain impacts. So what we see is only orbital space being used, Earth's orbital space being used to host satellites critical for communication, navigation, reconnaissance, early warning, position and timing, and say maybe ASAT capabilities. But that's not enough. Maybe tomorrow we'll be looking at orbital space of the moon, lunar space. That also may become part of the battlefield tomorrow. Cyber. Again, it's a new domain, but this warfare in this particular domain is expanding exponentially fast, and it makes it possible to defend, attack, disrupt, and deceive and dominate through the digital media. Today, if you look at the digital domain, which consists of, say, networks, devices, and applications, they actually govern our day-to-day life. This is being used not only for governance, but for dissemination of information, supply chain management, production, provision of services, and every aspect of our life actually is being governed by digital domain. And cyber warfare is actually embedded in this digital domain. So hence, the scope of cyber warfare expands very rapidly. You've seen these examples of disruption of air traffic in Europe 2 years back. That was in September 25 for a ransomware attack, and something like this we had seen in Ames, New Delhi, again, when there was a ransomware attack over there. Last domain which I want to speak about is the cognitive domain. And perhaps the most insidious, the cognitive domain has emerged as a battlefield targeting human mind and social system. Now, one may argue that cognitive domain is not new. It existed long time back, and the famous example of Mahabharat, which is given when Yudishtar deceived Dronacharya by saying that Ashwathama Hatohat. But today, actually, technologies are available that makes cognitive warfare even far more complex. So today, you've heard of terms like social engineering, which can influence minds of communities together. Today, micro-targeting is possible. You can target individuals because complex data analytics can actually find out which individual is seeking which kind of information. So you can influence individual minds to communities to nations. And a couple of these examples you've seen in our neighborhood recently. So hence, when we talk about multi-domain operations, we are not only talking about traditional domains, but emerging domains as well. So when we talk about combat, it's about fighting in these battlefields, the battlefield geometry of which is changing very rapidly and expanding, along with technologies to fight in those domains. But ultimately, combat is to be done by a combatant with the help of combat platforms. So over here, I'll talk about, again, few trends. One is about this large size combat platforms, which are important to provide sustained presence and mobility. And their presence signals power and credibility. So you have aircraft carriers, you have SSBNs, you have strategic bombers, you have tanks, you have multi-role fighter aircraft today, important platforms. But these platforms are costly, require extensive R&D, and incur higher cost on maintenance. On the other hand, if you look at weapons, the development of weapons which is taking place, over here, lethal and long-range weapons are evolving faster with artificial intelligence and autonomy as compared to platforms. So today, 1,000 crore costing aircraft can be destroyed by a missile which is just costing about 25 crores. Or a ship, a large destroyer costing 10,000 crores by again a missile, the cost of which may be just about 50 or 60 crores. So a correct match between what you want to keep in your part of your arsenal, that's becoming important. Apart from this, what is important is the networks which are connecting combatants with that particular platform, one platform with other platform, and platforms of diverse nature together, giving you a fused kind of a picture together. So these networks are creating, combination of the networks are creating a system of systems kind of an approach. And this is making, this will enhance cross-domain integration between air, ground, and sea, this kind of an warfare. And lastly is, of course, the combat units and combatants itself, I would say. Combat units you find today, earlier days we used to talk about IBGization, in which combat units would have elements of armor, mech, and infantry. But today, when these units itself, what our army chief has been professing, like this Rudra Arms Brigade or Bhairav Commando Battalions or Ashti Drone Platoons, in this traditional units, there are new kind of technology which are coming in. As far as combatants, talking about combatants, there have been a gradual shift in conventional application of force by use of, apart from armed forces, regular armed forces of the Union, to non-state actors, mercenaries, and contractors. This also is, apart from technology, is also the changing, the blurring the lines between humans, machines, and machines. So today, human endurance can be advanced, cognition can be advanced, recovery can be advanced because of medical advances in medical sciences. And I have already spoken about exoskeletals on humanoids, on man-machine mix kind of a system, and robots. So this is how the landscape of warfare is emerging and how technology is influencing warfare. And so the big question is, what are the Indian armed forces doing about it? So I'll just list out a few things as to where we are progressing and what is our thought process on this. Structural and organizational reforms. In this, we are looking at tri-service integration to drive doctrinal convergence, operational efficiency, capability developments, and procurements. We are looking at joint operational control centers where all kind of information is merged and fused so that we get a comprehensive picture. Then we are looking at enhancing our capabilities and resilience by expansion of space and cyber capabilities. Conceptually, we are looking at understanding how the warfare will evolve in future. And you all are aware that we have run 2 batches of future warfare courses. We have future warfare cells now in service headquarters. And shortly, we're going to have a future operations analysis group functional in headquarter IDS. All these changes have to be backed by doctrinal changes, and you must have noticed in this year we've issued about 8 joint doctrines for conduct of warfare. ranging for cyber, space, heliborne and airborne ops, amphibious, logistics. So a number of doctrines have been released in this year. We are also looking at battlefield transparency through networking and integrating of our networks. We've already done that as far as air defense networks are concerned, border management, ISR, MDA, Maritime Domain Awareness. So all this are going to give us a fused kind of picture. So every network gives us one picture, and then we are trying to integrate this. We are also introducing SDRs and modernized data links to improve our resilience. As far as manned-unmanned teaming, the programs which the Air Force and the Navy are running, the Air Force with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is running the combat air teaming system, the CATS, which will be based on the LCA Tejas, and will introduce also integrate with platforms like loiter ammunition, front drones, and high-altitude relay and communication drones. Apart from this, Indian Navy is also working on something similar, a naval CATS warrior kind of a project. For net centricity and data centricity, we are from net centricity, we want to progress about data centricity. That's to introduce artificial intelligence. So it will be all based on data. So that requires integration of our networks. That is being done. So we have a joint communication architecture and defense communication networks as a backup. Apart from this, we also are investing in supercomputing missions by deploying supercomputers and high performance computing machines ecosystem that will be base of our data centers. So these are the kind of efforts we are on, and some of them actually resulted in, if you could say, some kind of a success. What we achieved in Sindoor was because of this huge efforts which we have taken in the past 4 or 5 years. And if you know that whatever I've spoken about, if I were to summarize what Operation Sindoor was, it was kind of a first non-contact warfare where precision and long-range strikes were carried out. It was a mix of kinetic and non-kinetic warfare. It was network and digitized, means we had one fused picture. Some kind of intelligent warfare also, in which we tried to use very nascent or rudimentary artificial intelligence. It was multi-domain, its true sense. It also was a convergence of, you could say, tactical, operational art, and strategic warfare together. And of course, all this was happening in a very truncated kind of a time frame and very, very fast-paced. So I thought that what we actually have planned to do, so finally it manifested in that kind of warfare. So that was nice. And as part of my concluding remarks, let me say that geography has shaped warfare for millennia, but today it's almost sidelined by technology. The battle space across domains, our ancestor is exploding means across all domains in a manner which our ancestors had never kind of imagined. As military leaders, we must adapt to this new reality. We must invest in advanced technologies while maintaining the human judgment and ethical framework necessary to employ force responsibly. The fundamental truth remains unchanged. Warfare will remain about winning, whether you use geography or whether you use technology. Our responsibility is to ensure that when conflict comes, as it inevitably will, we possess the technology expertise and the superiority to protect a nation and also prevail. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind hearing.
Thank you, General Anil Chauhan, for a very thought-provoking tour d'horizon of the role of technology, emerging role of technology on the modern battlefield. I think General Chauhan has very successfully raised very critical issues, and what really struck me was about the overarching point that you made, that the third revolution in military affairs is actually non-linear. There is nothing very predictable about it, and it's also something that fuses apparently the traditional and the emerging domains. So that's something that's very thought-provoking, and your listing of the subterranean now alongside all the other known domains for warfare is also something that we look at with great interest. General Chauhan will now take 3 questions from the floor. I would like those that are attempting to pose these questions to restrict their comments to a question and not to any kind of personal expression of views. You may also kindly identify yourself, and it'll be 3 questions in all because we have a time constraint. The Honorable Raksha Mantri will soon be arriving, and so we have to wind up this most interesting session before that. So may I see the lady there first, please? Please introduce yourself. It'll be a brief question. You will note all 3 of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. I am Tejasvi. I am from the Center for Contemporary China Studies Division of MEA. Very insightful session, sir. My only question is, sir, like you talked about multi-domain operations, we understand a lot, most of them actually, future warfare courses are being conducted. Particularly, I would like to draw our attention to the cognitive domain, as you mentioned. The question is that how far do we understand the capabilities and the motivations of our adversaries in the cognitive domain as compared to the other domains per se, sir?
If I had to look at the cognitive domain, I see this particular warfare in this domain in 3 particular parts. One part is part of perception management, which occurs during peacetime. So it's a continuous kind of a process. Everyone's doing that. But to use it actually in warfare, along with kinetic effects, there are 2 parts of it. One is a defensive aspect of it, and one's a offensive part of it. Defensive aspect would be to do something with false narrative, false claims, etc., negating that kind of information, which actually overwhelms you during warfare. As we had seen during Sindoor also, number of false news, etc., fake news. So that has an overwhelming nature, and that creates confusion and takes away a lot of your time from commanders. This thing, so at least about 15-20% of our time actually gets wasted in combating in a narrative or a situation which doesn't actually exist. So combating that is a major challenge. So we need to put structures for that. And finally is, how do you influence the other guy? That's offensive, which I will give a small example of. So micro targeting, that could be individual. You can have toolkits for that, or you can have, related, you can do it with communities, etc., for which a lot of thought and a lot of studies are required. A lot of preparations are required before you can execute it during warfare.
A gentleman there.
Sir, I'm Brigadier Brijesh Pandey, veteran, sir. My question relates to civil-military fusion. I feel that the biggest aspect of civil-military fusion is R&D and technological fusion, sir. Now, this can only be achieved if we have an agency like US has, like DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which actually fuses anything and everything which is happening in the country, sir, nationwide, and brings it onto the national security table, sir. This also actually is a question subsequent to cognitive warfare, because when we look at neurotechnologies getting fused with social media and quantum computing, sir, I think that kind of thing can only happen if we have an agency like that. Do we have any plans, sir, or are we thinking in this direction?
Thank you, Brigadier Pandey. So let's not restrict civil-military fusion only to the to defense R&D and defense manufacturing. The scope of civil-military fusion, I think, is vast and huge. It can be related to logistics, supply chain management, and of course, manufacturing. So everything which we do in a nation, so we need, if we are doing it in a focused kind of a manner, it'll help us save cost, less expenditure on the exchequer. So a number of initiatives on this are already on the anvil. So whether it is Prime Minister Gati Shakti portal, which is for development of infrastructure. So that there has to be civil military fusion in that. Means today we have dual use airfields, we have flexi use of airspace. These are all part of our civil military fusion, which saves thousands of crores to airlines actually when they fly, or when we develop such kind of infrastructure. So it is far beyond what say DARPA is doing. That is only one aspect of civil military fusion. The scope is huge, and a number of such areas we are making some kind of an focused approach. and working towards it.
The third and last question, I will request the gentleman at the back. Yes, please, go ahead. Yes, use your mic, please. Mic, please.
Working. Morning, sir. This is Vishal from DD News. My question is, you've just spoken about the integration of tri-services and Indian Army and our forces being future ready. How helpful is the tri-services exercise which is ongoing at the Western Front to be future ready?
So this is not the first tri-service exercise which is happening. In fact, if you look for the past 2 years or so, all exercises which have happened, which were single service exercise, are now actually happening in a tri-service domain. So if Navy has to do exercise, it just contacts the relevant command on the area of operation. And then these exercises are done in a joint kind of a manner. It's not only the 3 domains that we are trying to integrate, it's also cyber, space, and perception management as of now, if not cognitive warfare. All these domains we are trying to integrate so that we learn a correct lessons and we are able to apply force in an integrated kind of a manner.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the special address delivered by General Anil Chauhan, Chief of Defence Staff. On behalf of all of you, I'm very General for sparing your valuable time. It was the most scintillating address, and I do hope you can convert it, as we are tempted to say, into a monograph of sorts. So you may all kindly please join me in acknowledging General Chauhan's presence here and to thank him for his wonderful lecture. I now have the privilege to invite the Honorable Raksha Mantri, Shri Rajnath Singh ji, to kindly deliver the inaugural address. Thank you all. Jai Hind.
Ambassadors from foreign friendly countries, General Anil Chauhan, Chief of Defence Staff, Ambassador Sujan or Shunai, DG, MP-IDSA, officers of the Ministry and the Armed Forces, distinguished participants, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt condolences to all those who lost their lives in the tragic incident that occurred in Delhi yesterday. I pray to God to grant strength and solace to the bereaved families in this hour of deep grief. From this platform, I wish to assure my citizens that the country's leading investigative agencies are conducting a swift and thorough inquiry into the incident. The findings of the investigation will soon be made public. I want to formally assure the nation that those responsible for this tragedy will be brought to the justice and will not be spared under any circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to be amidst this August Assembly of the eminent speakers and participants at the Delhi Defence Dialogue 2025. I extend my warmest welcome to our distinguished international guests, whose wisdom and a global perspective will enrich our deliberations and lend greater substance to this dialogue. I appreciate the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis and the Director General Ambassador Sujan Shunai for leading this edition of the Delhi Defence Dialogue. Firstly, I convey my congratulations on the successful convening of this edition of the Delhi Defence Dialogue. This forum has emerged as a flagship platform for thoughtful deliberations and a strategic engagement on the multifaceted challenges of defense and security. The dialogue brings together informed voices, fresh perspectives, and analytical insights to examine contemporary trends and evolving ideas in a rapidly transforming global environment. I also take this opportunity to wish the Director General, MP-IDSA, scholars, staff, members, and everyone who has been associated with the Institute a very happy 60th Foundation Day. I have been told that it was on this day that IDSA was instituted in 1965 with the vision to promote national and international security through the generation and the dissemination of knowledge on defense and security related issues. Over the years, MP-IDSA has emerged as one of the finest think tanks, not only in Asia, but also globally, through its in-depth, independent scholarly research, policy guidance, and efforts to enhance strategic thought in the country. I am hopeful that the Institute will continue its excellent work, striving towards its ideals and supporting efforts for the national and international security. The theme of the current edition of the Delhi Defense Dialogue is harnessing new age technology for defense capability development. In light of the prevailing international security environment and the ongoing Operation Sindoor, the choice of the theme is most appropriate. I compliment MP-IDSA for taking the discussion on this subject forward with scholars, practitioners, defense researchers, and industry representatives. Friends, the character of warfare as well as technology has been changing in every era. From the discovery of the gunpowder to the advent of aviation, from the dawn of radar to the age of cyber and space, each generation has witnessed its own technological revolution. It may be true that change feels faster today, but that is only a matter of scale and perception. Technology has always evolved steadily, persistently, and more often than not for the better. What truly matters, therefore, is not just the pace of technological change, but the pace at which we are able to absorb and adapt to it. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of the new age technology in defense, it is natural that our minds first go to the disruptive changes in modern warfare, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, swarm technologies, and so on. These are indeed transformative, and India and the world are making bold strides in each of these domains. But to truly interpret this theme, we must look beyond the obvious. I believe the power of technology is not limited to the devices or algorithm, but it lies in its all-encompassing nature, in the way it redefines every process, every system, and every decision that contributes to the national security. New age technologies is not just about what we fight with, but how we prepare, plan, and sustain. It shapes our procurement processes, our logistics networks, our decision framework, and even our training philosophies. Therefore, when I think about this theme of harnessing technology, I interpret it as a call to reimagine the entire defense ecosystem. Right from the spark of an idea in a research laboratory to its field validation in the forward bases, from the flow of the materials through our supply chain to the flow of intelligence through our command centers, technology must serve as a connective tissue that binds it all together. Whether it is designing a next generation radar, forecasting logistics needs through predictive analytics, or shortening decision cycles through digital dashboards, each element must work in harmony with the others. In this sense, harnessing technology is not just about adding new tools. It is about transforming the very basis of our institutions. It is about making them more agile, anticipatory, and adaptive. It is about creating a defense architecture that learns continuously, responds instantly, and evolves relentlessly in tune with the pace of change. Friends, it is but natural to get swept up in the prevailing buzzwords of our times. But I believe that the real revolution lies in the quieter, continuous improvement of the systems that enable faster, cleaner, and more transparent functioning. A high-speed data link or an AI-driven algorithm will achieve little if our internal processes remain slow. Even the promise of the quantum computing or autonomous systems will remain unrealized if we do not build the human and the institutional capacity to absorb and supply them effectively. The spirit of harnessing new technology must extend to the way we design policy, process information, and make decisions. In that sense, technology is not only a tool, but a culture. It is a way of doing things better, faster, and more intelligently. It is about ensuring that the data moves faster than doubt, that decision making is informed by evidence, and that the soldier, the scientist, and the civil servant all work in synergy through shared platform. Much of our defense readiness today rests on what might be called invisible technologies, which includes secure data architectures, encrypted networks, automated maintenance systems, and interoperable databases. These may not capture public imagination like a new aircraft or missile or warship, but they determine whether the right equipment reaches the right place at the right time, whether commanders have real-time visibility, and whether systems talk to each other seamlessly. Friends, as I said, technology is not confined to weapons or platforms alone. It also resides in systems that make our institutions work faster, more transparently, and more intelligently. The true test of technological advancement lies not only in what we create, but in how we function. Technology must be seen not only as a force multiplier, but also as a resource optimizer. The true measures of this, uh, the true measure of its impact lies in how efficiently it helps us plan, prioritize, and platform. One area which can serve as an example to internalize this thinking is our capital procurement process. This is because we operate in an environment of finite resources and expanding responsibilities. Every rupee spent and every system inducted must therefore yield the maximum strategic value. Technology and data analytics must be leveraged to improve decision making and ensure optimal use of every resource. I have been told that in many advanced nations, the concept of life cycle cost is deeply woven into their procurement frameworks. Recently, I have directed that we too must begin to access these sustenances costs right at the inception stage of every procurement proposals. This will help us see the full picture, not only what we invest today, but what we must sustain tomorrow. This will help us in ensuring that every decision we take is both informed and responsible, balancing immediate capability with long term efficiency. I am confident that there exist many more such global best practices or the process technologies that can further strengthen our systems. My advice to the armed forces would be to remain in a constant state of curiosity and always on the lookout for the best practices across the world, not just in technology related to equipment, but also the new technologies related to the aspects of the training, logistics, planning, and the management systems. This institute can play a crucial role in this endeavor by studying, documenting, and disseminating such practices and helping the services adapt them to our national context. In fact, if given a choice, it is far better to import best practices than to import the best equipment. Because once we perfect the process and once our systems are robust, adaptive, and transparent, we will not merely purchase excellence from abroad, we can produce it here at home. And that, friends, brings us to the heart of the matter. Ultimately, the real challenge before any nation is to build systems and ecosystems that make the creation as well as the adoption of the new technology natural, swift, and self-sustaining. If our foundations are strong, our institutions agile, our minds open, and our collaboration seamless, then every new technological wave will not overwhelm us. It will propel us. We will not merely adopt the revolutions made elsewhere, but become the architects of the revolution born here. Therefore, for India, the path ahead is clear. We must move decisively from technology adoption to technology leadership. We can no longer be content with merely catching up to global innovation. We must aim to set the pace and shape the future. Our strength lies not in any single institution, but in our ecosystem of talent, ideas, and partnerships. And we have a young and inventive workforce full of imagination and purpose. And we have a vibrant startup culture that is unafraid to experiment, to take risks, and to challenge convention. Our defense industrial base is expanding with the renewed confidence and the clarity of the direction. The synergy between DRDO, our armed forces, industry, and academia is deepening and creating a virtuous cycle of research, testing, field feedback, and innovation. We must continue to nurture the culture of innovation by giving our scientists and startups both the freedom of imagine and the support to deliver, by encouraging collaboration over silos and speed over procedural in Russia. Technology leadership doesn't emerge from isolated brilliance. It grows from a national ecosystem that rewards ideas, tolerates failures, and celebrates breakthroughs. Friends, in the past, the defense and the government agencies drove technological initiatives with their spin-off benefits percolating into society. The internet is one such example. Increasingly, technological innovation is being driven by the commercial world, and defense and the government agencies are adapting such technologies subsequently. The technology is increasingly being democratized. It is encouraging to note the drive and enthusiasm of the Indian commercial industry towards enhancing the nation's technological threshold. Initiatives like IDEX and the Technology Development Fund are already nurturing a new generation of innovators who see national defense not merely as a sector of employment, but as a mission of our national service. They are the architects of a future where cutting-edge technologies from autonomous systems and the quantum sensors to advanced materials and space-based surveillance will bear the imprint of Indian ingenuity. From young entrepreneurs, MSMEs, to captains of the Indian multinationals, individuals, and the companies have displayed the collective will to help achieve the mission of Viksit Bharat and Atmanirbharta. Friends, Atmanirbharta in the digital age goes beyond manufacturing systems within our borders. It extends to digital sovereignty, which means control over the algorithms, data, and the chips that power our platforms. True strategic autonomy will come only when our code is as indigenous as our hardware. We are therefore encouraging secure, indigenous software stacks, trusted semiconductor supply chains, and homegrown artificial intelligence models trained on Indian data. This is not merely about security as much it is about confidence. Confidence that every byte, every beam, and every bot we deploy is aligned with our strategic objectives. And that amidst all the excitement about machines and algorithms, we must remember that technology ultimately serves the human. It is not meant to replace human judgment, but to amplify it. I think we must also invest in the ethical, psychological, and the legal dimensions of these emerging technologies. India as a civilizational power can and must lead the conversation on the responsible and the human use of the military technology. Friends, in conclusion, I would like to say that the harnessing new age technologies for defense capability development is not merely about upgrading our arsenal, it is about transforming our entire approach to national security. Technology for us should not be an end in itself. Rather, it should be an instrument of efficiency, of integration, and of empowerment. It is about turning processes into platforms and the systems into ecosystems. It is about ensuring that every investment in technology enhances not only our capability, but also our credibility and the confidence as a nation. It must make our forces faster in decision, sharper in response, and stronger in outcome. It must help us use every rupee, every resource, and every idea more intelligently. Friends, our task, therefore, is not only to acquire new technologies, but to create the conditions where technology can thrive through sound processes, agile institutions, and a spirit of collaboration that unites the soldier, the scientist, the startup, and the strategist. That is how India will move from being a consumer of technology to a creator of technology, and from adapting to technological revolutions made elsewhere to shaping revolutions born here. Friends, before I end my address, I extend my very best wishes to all participants of the Delhi Defense Dialogue 2025. I wish you productive deliberations to better understand our technological goals and means to achieve them. Once again, I extend my heartiest compliments and congratulations to the MP-IDSA team for organizing such a vibrant event. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to personally thank Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh ji for his profound, incisive remarks, which will be of great value to us and will guide the deliberations today as well as tomorrow during our two-day conference. I personally also wish to acknowledge and thank General Anil Chauhan for his gracious presence here on this momentous occasion.
Thank you for a very enlightening address, sir. May I now request Colonel Vivek Chadha, Senior Fellow MP-IDSA and the Conference Coordinator, to deliver the vote of thanks.
On behalf of the Director General Manohar Parikar, IDSA, I would like to thank the Honorable Raksha Mantri and President MP-IDSA, Shri Rajnath Singh, for his inaugural address. His address provides an ideal policy framework and vision for the following sessions over the next 2 days. May I also thank the Director General for his welcome address.